The scream echoed down the corridor of Rikers Island just before sunrise. Officer Vega froze where he stood, his flashlight beam shaking across the cold, damp floor. Inside the unit known as 6 Main, something was wrong, terribly wrong. A guard's voice shouted from the far end, "Lockdown! We've got a breach in Tier C." Doors slammed. Radios buzzed. The sound of boots pounded against the concrete. Vega ran toward the noise. Ahead, the heavy metal door to Tier C was wide open, lights flickering inside the cell block. He could hear shouting, deep, angry voices clashing with the sharp commands of officers. As he turned the corner, his flashlight caught the sight no guard ever wanted to see, one of their own trapped behind a broken gate, surrounded by inmates. "Officer Morales!" Vega yelled. But the sound was swallowed by chaos, steel crashing, inmates yelling, alarms screaming. The control tower lights went out, and for a moment, the entire block went dark. Then a spark, the flash of a lighter. In that flicker of light, Vega saw faces pressed against the bars, eyes wild with fear and fury. "Get back!" someone shouted. The darkness pulsed with noise, shouting, panic, and then silence. A single bang followed. Something, or someone, had gone down. And right as the backup team burst into the hallway, Vega saw what made him stop in his tracks. On the control panel beside the cells, the switch that opened the main gates had been pulled by a guard's hand. Everything stopped. The radios crackled, but no one spoke. A guard had turned against his own team. Hours earlier, before the chaos, the night had been quiet, at least by Rikers standards. Officer Vega leaned against the concrete wall of the staff room, sipping cold coffee. Around him, other guards talked softly, trying to make it through the last few hours of the shift. "Man, this place is eating people alive," Officer Morales said, rubbing his face. 2 more guards quit this week. Said they couldn't take it anymore. Vega nodded. "You can't blame them. You see what happens here every day." Every guard at Rikers Island knew the truth. The jail wasn't just rough on inmates. It broke the people working there too. Long hours, constant danger, little support. They were supposed to keep control, but most days, it felt like they were the ones locked in. Morales pointed toward the hallway. "You hear about Tier C? They say the gang leaders are running it now. Even some new guards are scared to go down there." Vega frowned. "They shouldn't be running anything. Not if the system's working." Morales gave a tired laugh. "The systems never worked here." Their radios crackled. "Attention officers, report to Tier C. Inmate disturbance in progress." Morales sighed. "Here we go again." As they entered the cell block, the smell hit first, sweat, bleach, and the sharp staleness of confinement. Inmates shouted from behind the bars, some banging on the doors just to be heard. A fight had broken out between 2 cells, and a group of inmates were egging it on. "Break it up!" Morales shouted, but his voice barely carried. Vega moved in to assist, baton ready, but his focus shifted when he noticed something odd. One of the upper-tier gates was slightly ajar. "Hey, who left that open?" Vega called. No answer. The officer stationed there had disappeared. Then, faintly, he heard it, metal scraping like someone prying open a lock. He looked up toward the catwalk just in time to see a shadow slip through the gate. "Morales!" Vega shouted. "Someone's on the upper level." Morales looked up, confusion turning to alarm. "That's Officer Kent's post." "Where is he?" Before either of them could move, the overhead lights flickered once, then went black. In the darkness, the shouting began. Keys rattled. Someone yelled for help. The radios burst with static and half-finished calls. Vega turned on his flashlight and caught a glimpse of Kent, his uniform barely visible, his face twisted in something between anger and fear. And in his hand, Vega saw the unmistakable shape of a security key. "Kent!" Vega shouted. "What are you doing?" But Kent didn't answer. Instead, he jammed the key into the main control panel and turned it hard. All around them, the electronic locks began to click. The cell doors started opening. One by one. "Fall back!" Morales shouted, but it was too late. The prisoners realized what was happening. They surged toward the open gates, shouting, pushing, breaking free. Vega swung his baton, trying to hold them back, but there were too many. The sirens screamed louder, red lights flashing through the smoke in panic. And just as Vega reached for his radio to call for backup, he heard Kent's voice through the noise, low, calm, and chilling. "You think we're the only ones trapped here?" Then the control panel sparked, lights exploded, and the room filled with chaos once more. The control room was chaos. Red lights blinked on the panels, alarms screamed down every hallway, and the whole jail seemed to shake. Officer Miles ran toward the gate, shouting over the sirens. "Lock down C block now." But his radio only spat static. Somewhere in the distance, metal clanged, the sound of a cell door being kicked open. Then a voice rose through the smoke. "You think we don't see what you do, Miles?" It was Deshawn, the same inmate who had saved the young guard weeks ago. Now his face was twisted with anger, a thin trail of blood running down his cheek. Behind him stood a crowd of prisoners, fists clenched, ready for something ugly. Miles froze. He had seen fights before, but this was different. The air felt alive with fury. "Deshawn, listen to me," he shouted, his heart pounding. "This isn't the way. You'll just make it worse." Deshawn's grip tightened on the broken broom handle in his hand. "Worse? You think it can get worse in this place?" His voice cracked as he spoke. "You don't live here, officer. We do." The lights flickered again, plunging everything into a half-dark world of flashing red. The floor was wet from the sprinklers, slick under Miles' boots. For a moment, nobody moved. It was quiet enough to hear breathing, quick and shallow. Then, someone in the back threw a metal tray. It clanged against the bars, and all hell broke loose. Inmates surged forward. Guards shouted. Smoke rolled through the corridor, blinding everyone. Miles ducked, swinging his baton to block a hit. 2 guards beside him fell, shouting for backup that wasn't coming fast enough. It was chaos, shouting, footsteps, metal striking metal. "Fall back," someone yelled, but the crowd pressed harder. Miles was trapped between the inmates and the locked gate behind him. He could barely breathe through the smoke. Then, through the madness, he saw Deshawn again. Deshawn's arm was raised, ready to strike, but when their eyes met, something in his face changed. He froze, breathing hard. "Get your men out," he said roughly. This wasn't supposed to go this far. Miles didn't hesitate. He grabbed the injured guard beside him and pulled him backward toward the side hallway. They stumbled down the corridor, coughing as another explosion echoed behind them. It wasn't a bomb, just a gas canister from the riot team. Heavy boots thundered from the far end. SWAT-like officers in full armor stormed through the smoke, shields up, shouting commands. "Get on the ground. Down now." The inmates scattered. Some obeyed. Others ran deeper into the cell block. Stun grenades flashed, blinding everyone with bursts of white light. Miles covered his ears as the shock waves rattled the walls. When the dust settled, the floor was covered in water, smoke, and scattered trays. The riot was over, for now. Miles leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. His uniform was ripped, his hands shaking. Around him, the other guards were helping each other up, coughing, limping. The sound of the alarms faded, replaced by the slow drip of leaking pipes. The warden's voice came through the intercom, low and angry. "All units, stand by. Head count begins now." But Miles didn't move. His eyes drifted toward one of the solitary wings, where the heavy doors were still closed. Something didn't feel right. He walked down the hall slowly, stepping over broken glass. The air was colder there, the lights dimmer. He reached cell 9, the one that held the most dangerous inmate in Rikers. Reed was a tall, gray-haired man, quiet but terrifying. He was once a gang leader, and even locked alone, he still had power. The other inmates whispered about him, said he could start a riot without saying a word. Miles peered through the slot in the cell door. Empty. He blinked, thinking maybe he was mistaken. He opened the door. The small room was silent, bed unmade, food tray untouched, but no Reed. Just the faint smell of smoke and something else, freedom. Miles' radio crackled suddenly. "All officers report, inmate Reed unaccounted for." Repeat, Reed is missing. The guard's stomach dropped. No, that's impossible. He turned around, eyes darting toward the corridor. The security door had been half open during the riot. The chaos, the smoke, it had been the perfect distraction. He sprinted toward the control room, shouting into his radio. Reed's out. I repeat, Reed is out. Officers ran in every direction, locking down gates, shouting codes. Helicopter lights swept across the yard outside as sirens wailed again. Miles pressed his hands against the window, watching as the searchlights moved across the dark island. For a long moment he said nothing. He could almost feel Reed's presence, somewhere out there in the shadows, smiling. Because if there was one thing everyone knew about Rikers Island, it was this: nobody escapes. Until now. And somewhere in the smoke-filled distance, a single voice whispered through a broken speaker. This isn't over. The lights flickered one last time and went out.